The sun hung low over the barren desert, casting long shadows across the cracked earth. A soft hum filled the air as a sleek silver spacecraft descended from the sky, its surface glinting like polished metal. The ship hovered for a moment before landing gently on the ground, sending up small clouds of dust that swirled in the dry wind. Around it, a group of humans stood waiting, their faces tense but determined. Daniel Carter adjusted his tie nervously, his eyes fixed on the alien craft. He was no stranger to high-stakes negotiations, but this was different. This wasn't another country or corporation, it was an entirely new species. Beside him, Emily Dawson shifted her weight from one foot to the other, clutching a tablet tightly in her hands. She had spent weeks preparing for this meeting, studying every scrap of information Earth's scientists had gathered about the aliens. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were woefully unprepared. The silence stretched as the ship's door slid open with a hiss. A figure stepped out, tall and slender, with smooth gray skin and large almond-shaped eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. His movements were deliberate, almost graceful. He wore a flowing robe-like garment that shimmered faintly in the sunlight. For a moment, he simply stood there, gazing at the humans with an unreadable expression. "Greetings," the alien said finally, his voice deep and resonant, though slightly mechanical. "I am Cale Van, ambassador of the Valerie Confederation." Daniel cleared his throat and stepped forward, extending a hand cautiously. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador. I'm Daniel Carter, representing the United Nations. And this is Emily Dawson, our lead scientist." Calvin tilted his head slightly, observing Daniel's outstretched hand, before mimicking the gesture. His touch was cool and firm, unlike anything Daniel had ever felt. "It is an honor to meet you," Calvin replied. "Your planet has much to offer, and we hope to learn from your achievements." Emily forced a polite smile, though her mind raced with questions. What did they really want? Why now? She glanced at the ship behind him, noting its intricate design, and the faint glow emanating from its hull. It was far beyond anything humanity had created, and yet, something about it made her uneasy as the formal introductions continued. Rachel Monroe lingered at the edge of the group, scribbling notes into her notepad. A seasoned journalist known for her investigative skills, she had been assigned to cover the historic event. But Rachel wasn't satisfied with just reporting the official story. She wanted the truth. Her sharp eyes darted between Calvin and the human delegation, picking up on subtle cues most would miss. When Calvin mentioned his people's desire to share knowledge, Rachel noticed how his gaze flickered toward Daniel for a split second too long, as if gauging his reaction. Later, as the group moved to a nearby tent set up for discussions, Emily pulled Daniel aside. "Did you notice anything off about him?" she whispered, keeping her voice low. Daniel frowned. "Like what?" "I don't know," Emily admitted. "Maybe it's nothing. But when he talked about sharing knowledge, it sounded almost rehearsed. And have you seen his ship?" "There's something strange about it. I can't put my finger on it." Daniel sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "We're dealing with an alien species, Emily. Everything about them is going to seem strange. Let's focus on building trust first." But as they sat down to begin talks, neither of them could shake the nagging feeling that there was more to Cale Vanant, his mission than met the eye. The tent buzzed with quiet energy as the humans and Cale Van settled into their seats. A long table separated them, its surface scattered with papers, laptops, and cups of water. The air was cool inside, a welcome relief from the desert heat outside. Calvin sat at the center of one side, his posture perfectly upright, while Daniel and Emily took their places across from him. Rachel lingered near the back of the tent, pretending to jot down notes but secretly watching every move. "I understand your curiosity," Calvin began, his voice calm and measured. "But let me assure you, my intentions are peaceful. My people face a crisis, a dying planet, and we seek only knowledge and cooperation." Emily leaned forward slightly, her brow furrowed. Your technology is far more advanced than ours. Why come to Earth now? Why not earlier? Kelvin's large eyes blinked slowly, as if considering how much to reveal. Our species has observed yours for many years. We waited until you reached a level of stability both socially and environmentally. Only recently did we believe you were ready for contact. Daniel nodded thoughtfully, though he couldn't help feeling uneasy. Something about Kelvin's tone seemed rehearsed, almost too polished. Still, he pressed on. What kind of assistance do you need, and what can you offer us in return? Kelvin gestured toward his ship, which loomed silently in the distance. We possess technologies that could revolutionize your world. Clean energy sources, medical advancements, methods to restore damaged ecosystems. In exchange, we ask for access to resources and data unique to your planet. Together, we could build a brighter future. The words sounded promising, even inspiring. But Emily wasn't convinced. She glanced at the tablet in front of her, pulling up images of Earth's recent environmental recovery efforts. If your planet is so advanced, why haven't you solved your own problems? Shouldn't you have the tools to fix this yourselves? A flicker of emotion crossed Kelvin's face, though it vanished quickly. Our mistakes cannot be undone easily. Some wounds run too deep. That is why we look to others for guidance, for hope. Rachel scribbled furiously in her notebook, her instincts tingling. There was something off about his explanation, though she couldn't quite pinpoint what. As the conversation continued, she noticed small details, the way Kelvin avoided direct questions, the subtle tension in his movements when certain topics arose. He was hiding something, that much was clear. Later, during a break in the discussions, Emily pulled Daniel aside again. Did you see how evasive he got when I asked about their tech? It doesn't add up. If they're so desperate for help, why aren't they more open? Daniel frowned, glancing toward Kelvin, who stood by the tent flap, gazing out at the desert. You might be overthinking it. They probably just don't trust us yet. Can you blame them? Maybe, Emily muttered, unconvinced. But there's something else. Did you notice those signals coming from his ship? The ones I recorded earlier? Daniel raised an eyebrow. What signals? Emily hesitated, then pulled out her phone, showing him a graph displayed on the screen. I picked these up using the portable scanner. They're faint, but they match patterns similar to military communications. Not exactly friendly, if you ask me. Daniel stared at the graph, his stomach sinking. Military frequencies. Could Kelvin really be here for something other than peace? Before he could respond, Rachel approached them, her expression serious. I think you two should hear this, she said quietly. I've been digging around, talking to some contacts, and there's talk of classified documents related to this meeting. Someone high up isn't telling us everything. Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. This was getting complicated fast. Let's keep this between us for now, he said firmly. We need proof before jumping to conclusions. As they returned to the table, Kelvin greeted them with a polite smile, seemingly unaware of their suspicions. Yet beneath his calm exterior, there was a flicker of unease, hint that perhaps he knew more than he let on. The discussions resumed, but the atmosphere in the tent had shifted. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that Kelvin was holding something back. She kept glancing at her tablet, where the mysterious signals from his ship were still displayed, as faint spikes on a graph. Rachel's revelation about classified documents only deepened her unease. If Earth's leaders were hiding information, what else weren't they telling her? Kelvin, meanwhile, seemed eager to steer the conversation toward more neutral topics. Your planet has achieved remarkable progress in renewable energy, he said, his voice smooth and reassuring. We wish to learn how you managed such feats. Daniel nodded politely, though his mind was racing. He tried to focus on the ambassador's words, but his thoughts kept drifting to Emily's findings and Rachel's hints. Was this all just an elaborate ruse? He decided to test the waters. Your people must have made similar advances, he said casually. What can you teach us? Kelvin hesitated for a moment, his large eyes narrowing slightly. Our technology is different. It may not be compatible with your methods, but we are willing to share what we can. Rachel, seated near the edge of the tent, raised an eyebrow. The answer sounded vague, almost evasive. She leaned forward slightly, pretending to jot notes while keeping her ears sharp. Ambassador, she interjected suddenly, catching everyone off guard. You mentioned observing Earth for years. What exactly did you observe? Kelvin turned his gaze toward her, his expression unreadable. Many things, he replied after a pause. Your culture, your conflicts, your resilience. We watched as you nearly destroyed yourselves and then rebuilt. His tone was calm, but there was a weight behind his words that made Rachel uneasy. She pressed further. And during that time, did you ever consider intervening, helping us, sooner? This time, Kelvin's hesitation was more noticeable. He glanced briefly at Daniel, as if seeking guidance, before responding. Intervention would have been unwise. Your species needed to find its own path. Emily frowned, leaning closer. Unwise, or risky. Were you afraid we might pose a threat? The room fell silent. Kelvin's composure faltered for just a second, his lips tightening into a thin line. We do not fear your kind, he said firmly, though his voice lacked its usual warmth. But caution is necessary when dealing with unknown variables. Rachel exchanged a glance with Emily, who gave a subtle nod. They were onto something. Whatever Kelvin was hiding, it was tied to why his people had waited so long to make contact and why they were here now, later. After the session ended, Rachel pulled Emily aside, outside the tent. The desert wind whipped around them, carrying grains of sand that stung their skin. Did you hear him? Rachel asked, her voice low but urgent. He practically admitted they've been watching us like lab rats. Emily nodded, clutching her tablet tightly. And those signals, I'm sure they're connected. I need to analyze them more closely tonight. Maybe I can figure out what they mean. Rachel crossed her arms, her sharp eyes scanning the horizon. If they're planning something, we need to know soon. This isn't just about science any more, it's about survival. Inside the tent, Daniel sat alone, staring at the empty chair where Kelvin had been moments ago. He replayed the conversation in his head, searching for clues. Something didn't add up. Why would an advanced species come all this way just to trade knowledge? And why was Kelvin so careful with his answers? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the desert in shades of orange and purple, Daniel made a decision. He would dig deeper, starting with those classified documents Rachel mentioned. Whatever secrets lay buried, he needed to uncover them before it was too late. Night had fallen over the desert, blanketing the area in a thick silence broken only by the occasional rustle of wind. Inside the tent, Daniel sat hunched over a laptop, its glow illuminating his tired face. Rachel had managed to get her hands on some of the classified documents she'd mentioned earlier, and now they were spread across the screen in front of him. The files were heavily redacted, with large portions blacked out, but what little remained was enough to make his stomach churn. They've been planning this for years, Daniel muttered under his breath, scrolling through page after page of cryptic notes and technical jargon. Emily stood beside him, arms crossed, her expression grim as she read over his shoulder. Look at this, there's mention of resource exchanges, but also something about strategic positioning. What does that even mean? Emily frowned, pointing at a section of the document. And here it says something about Earth providing logistical support for their fleet. Why would we do that, unless they're using us? Rachel interrupted, stepping into the tent. She held a cup of coffee in one hand, though it was clear she hadn't touched it. Her sharp eyes darted between Daniel and Emily. This isn't just about sharing technology or helping their planet. They're scouting ooze for something bigger. Daniel leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. The pieces were starting to fit together, but the picture they formed wasn't pretty. If Kelvin's people weren't here purely for aid, then what was their real goal? And how much did Kelvin himself know? The next morning, tensions ran high as the humans reconvened with the alien ambassador. Kelvin greeted them with his usual calm demeanor. But there was an edge to his movements, a subtle stiffness that hadn't been there before. As the meeting began, Emily decided to push harder for answers. "Ambassador," she said, her voice steady despite the nerves bubbling beneath the surface, "you mentioned your ship is equipped with advanced systems. Could you explain how those systems work? We're curious about how they might integrate with our own tech." Kelvin tilted his head slightly, his large eyes narrowing. "Our systems are complex and tailored to our needs. I'm afraid explaining them in detail would serve no practical purpose." Rachel leaned forward, her pen poised over her notepad. "But surely there's some overlap. After all, you came here seeking collaboration. Don't you want us to understand your capabilities?" For the first time, Kelvin hesitated visibly. His gaze flickered between the three humans, lingering briefly on Emily before settling on Daniel. "Perhaps another time," he said finally, his tone measured but firm. "There are more pressing matters to discuss." Emily exchanged a quick glance with Rachel, who gave a barely perceptible nod. It was time to take a risk. Reaching into her bag, Emily pulled out her tablet and turned it toward Kelvin. On the screen was a graph showing the strange signals his ship had been emitting. "We detected these frequencies coming from your vessel," Emily explained, her voice calm but pointed. "They resemble military communication patterns. Can you tell us what they are?" The room went silent. Kelvin stared at the graph, his expression unreadable. For a moment, it seemed like he might deny it altogether. Then, slowly, he sound almost imperceptible, but heavy with meaning. "I see," he said softly, his gaze shifting away. "You have been thorough." Daniel leaned forward, his heart pounding. "Kelvin, if there's something you're not telling us, now's the time to speak up. Whatever it is, we need to know." Kelvin remained silent for several seconds, the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone in the room. Finally, he spoke, his voice quieter than usual. "Very well, there are aspects of my mission I have not yet disclosed. But please, understand it was never my intention to deceive you." Rachel clenched her jaw, her pen hovering above her notebook. "Then start talking. What exactly are you hiding?" Kelvin looked at each of them in turn, his alien eyes filled with a mix of guilt and resolve. Whatever he was about to say, it was clear the fragile trust they had built was about to be tested if it hadn't already shattered completely. Kelvin's pause stretched into an uncomfortable silence. The humans watched him intently, their expressions a mix of suspicion and anticipation. Finally, he spoke, his voice softer than before but tinged with resignation. "My people are desperate," he began, choosing his words carefully. "Our planet is dying, as I told you. But the truth is, we have explored many worlds in search of solutions. Some of those worlds resisted our presence, others did not survive." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean, did not survive?" Kelvin hesitated again, his large eyes avoiding direct contact. "When a civilization refuses to cooperate or when they pose a threat, we must act to protect ourselves. It is not something we take lightly, but survival often demands difficult choices." Rachel's pen froze mid-motion. She stared at Kelvin, her mind racing. "Are you saying your people invade other planets? Is that what you're planning here?" "No." Kelvin's response was sharp, almost defensive. He leaned forward slightly, his hands clasped tightly together. "Earth is different. We saw potential in your species, a chance for mutual benefit. That is why I am here to find another way. But there are factions among my people who believe conquest is inevitable. They see Earth as both an opportunity and a risk. Daniel rubbed his temples, trying to process what he was hearing. So you're telling us your leaders might invade us anyway, even if you don't agree with it? Calvin nodded slowly. That is why I need your help. If I can prove that cooperation works, if I can show them Earth is willing to share resources and knowledge, they may reconsider. But time is short. My fleet will arrive soon, and once they do, his voice trailed off, leaving the unspoken threat hanging in the air. Emily glanced at Daniel, then at Rachel. All three wore identical looks of disbelief and dread. This wasn't just about diplomacy anymore, it was about survival. If Calvin was telling the truth, humanity might already be on the brink of disaster. What happens when your fleet gets here? Emily asked, her voice steady, despite the knot forming in her stomach. Will they attack us? Calvin shook his head. Not immediately. They will assess your defenses first. If they determine you cannot resist, they may attempt negotiations or worse. But if they see strength, resolve. It could buy us more time. Rachel stood up abruptly, pacing back and forth near the edge of the tent. This is insane. We're sitting here talking while an alien army could be heading straight for us. What are we supposed to do? Roll out the red carpet and hope they play nice? Daniel raised a hand to calm her. We need to think this through. Panicking won't help anyone. Turning back to Calvin, he asked, is there any way to stop them? To make them turn around? Calvin looked down, his expression heavy with guilt. I cannot control their actions. But if you fortify your defenses, use the data I've shared to understand our technology, you might stand a chance. And perhaps I can convince them to stand down. The room fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. Humanity had faced threats before, but nothing like this. An alien invasion wasn't just science fiction anymore, it was a real possibility. Emily clenched her fists, anger bubbling beneath her calm exterior. You put us in this position, she said coldly. If your people wanted peace, they wouldn't have come armed. Calvin flinched at her accusation but didn't deny it. Instead, he met her gaze with a look of genuine remorse. I know I have failed you, but I am here now, offering what little I can. Will you accept it or reject it, and face the consequences alone? As the meeting ended, the humans stepped outside, the cool night air doing little to ease their tension. Rachel turned to Daniel and Emily, her voice low but urgent. We need to warn everyone. Governments, militaries, the public. They all deserve to know what's coming. Daniel nodded grimly. And we'll need Calvin's help to prepare. Whether we trust him or not, he's the only ally we've got right now. But, as they looked back at the silver ship glowing faintly under the stars, one question lingered in all their minds. Was Calvin truly on their side or just another piece of the danger looming over Earth?